We're at the end of the book of Judges. I must tell you that for me it was quite a traumatic journey. We've seen how the Israelites really battled the nations not to assimilate. And then we get to the last few chapters where we see some serious infighting between the tribes themselves. And the whole chapter and the whole book finishes where we're standing right now in Shiloh. Can you tell us a little bit more of where we're standing?
Right. The book does end with a certain reconciliation among the Israelite tribes. And in chapter 21, verse 12, they gather at Shiloh to try to effect that reconciliation after a very difficult battle. Shiloh is a very interesting place. We're standing in front of a Canaanite wall, a wall that was built in the Middle Bronze era between approximately 2000 and 1500 BCE. By the time the Israelites arrived in the land of Israel around the 13th century, 12th century BCE, this site had long been abandoned by the Canaanites. It was no longer settled by the Canaanites. And one of the interesting questions, of course, is where will the Israelites settle in this site? The logical thing to do, of course, would be to settle within the wall, inside the city. Right.
Correct.
This wall provides protection. We'll find something very interesting when we go to the next point along this wall and see where the Israelites do in fact settle.
Let's go and have a look. Sean, we've been following this wall right now, and what we see at this specific spot, that there are buildings or some kind of house outside the wall. What's the reason for this?
That's a very important question. And in fact, here we do see that the Israelite buildings from the period of the Judges, 13th, 12th, 11th centuries, are outside the city wall. There's a deliberate statement being made here to stay outside the city wall, not to be part of Canaanite urban culture, not to be part of the city-state system, not to be part of a city wall system with walls and kings, to stay outside and to be a kind of rural, non-regal culture.
So what do we find inside the city in the times of the Israelites?
Okay, when the Israelites settle here in the 12th, 11th centuries and so on, the inside of the city, inside the wall, is largely empty. There isn't, as far as we know from the most recent digs, a settlement inside the city.
So basically what you're saying is that the buildings outside are younger than what we find inside.
That's correct. The buildings outside are classic Iron I settlement period Israelite architecture and pottery, whereas the majority of the material inside is the Middle Bronze Age, 2000 to 1500 BCE, classic Canaanite materials.
And how can you prove that? How can we see it from?
Well, let's go look at the pottery and the architecture that are in the Israelite area right here.
Let's go.
And Arena, right in front of us is a jar. And what do you think it is?
Firstly, it looks like a replica. I don't think the real thing will be standing here.
Correct.
But from what I see here, I think it might have contained wine or oil.
Yes.
Something.
This is a collared rim jar. It's a replica of a collared rim jar. The original is in the Israel Museum. And in this location, outside the city wall of Shiloh, were found a series of these collared rim jars, which are typical pottery of the Iron I Israelite period. They are, as you said, storage jars. They're used by individual farmers or groups of farmers to store produce from the harvest all the way through next year's harvest. And they're located here in another one of the symbols of Israelite culture from the Iron I period, and that's the four-room house.
We see. Like we saw in the previous chapters, we spoke about a typical four-room house, and you say that right here we have another one.
Like in the first chapter of Judges, we saw a four-room house at Isbetzarta. Here at Shiloh, we see another four-room house, again outside the wall.
Okay.
And the four-room house is entered from here. We have divisions here of rooms. All of the rooms reach the central courtyard. There's a pillar here. And in this central courtyard, domestic activities, for example, such as pounding grain, were done. And this is a replica of a mortar and pestle where the grain pounding might have been done. This was done in the central courtyard. The side rooms are used for sleeping or for keeping animals. And there's a whole series of four-room houses with collared rim jars and the mortar and pestle, all outside the wall of Shiloh. This is one of the interesting aspects of the Israelite period at Shiloh. Now, one of the other interesting things is that Shiloh is spoken of in the Bible as the place of the Mishkan. And that's the reason that the tribes gather at Shiloh, and that Joshua gathers the people at Shiloh, and that Shiloh plays a very central role in the book of Samuel, which we'll come to next.
Sean, it's amazing to think about standing in four-room houses here. It means that we're standing where everything happened. What you read in the Tanakh, what you read in Judges, our forefathers, the Israelites, literally lived where we're standing right now. But I understand that Shiloh was actually a center gathering place for the Israelites. Why is that?
Right. Shiloh is not just a collection of houses. Shiloh does in fact become a central gathering place. It's spoken about in Joshua, the book of Joshua, in the book of Judges, and then in Samuel as the place where the tabernacle, the Mishkan, is established. And if we go a little bit farther north, we'll see a very interesting large plaza where some think the tabernacle might have been established, but in any case it's a very useful point to gather people together.
I'm very excited. Let's go and see if we can find it. Sean, where exactly are we standing right now?
That's a very good question. We're standing here at an area on the north part of Tel Shiloh, which has a natural rock natural rock platform dug out of the rock, possibly used for originally built for agricultural activity, but which many have claimed is the place where the tabernacle stood.
Okay, so we're coming full circle here. We have Joshua calling the people to Shiloh to give them their geographical boundaries. Then he moves them to Shechem, that we saw in previous chapters, and then he wants to give them their ethical boundaries.
Right, that's Joshua 17 to 21 at Shiloh, and then Joshua 24 in Shechem, and then?
Correct. And then we come back, and now we're at the end of Judges again, finding ourselves in Shiloh. And this time, the story is a little bit different. A terrible incident happens in chapter 19. Our viewers can go and read that. And then a battle ensues between the Israelites and the tribe of Benjamin. 25,000 men are killed, and only 600 survive. And then we get to this point where the tribal leaders realize, but we are at a terrible state where one of the tribes are now being banned from Klal Israel, the people of Israel. And they're trying to find a way to lift that ban. What happens?
Well, they gather at Shiloh. They see Shiloh as a central gathering place. And at Shiloh, they decide on a ruse to lift the ban. They will use the occasion of the festival celebrated at Shiloh to invite the tribe of Benjamin to meet and marry women from the rest of Israel.
It's very interesting. We read about this festival. It says a festival unto Hashem, and then something happens.
Right. At this festival, which is celebrated at Shiloh, the Israelites come and gather, and at that point they lift the ban on Benjamin, and Benjamin marries women, and Benjamin becomes again a full-fledged tribe of Israel.
I'm reading that the solution has something to do with maidens dancing in the vineyards in the Shiloh area.
Right, well, in all periods, the grape harvest is celebrated at the end of the summer in the land of Israel. That harvest is a time of celebration, a successful grape harvest, and the rabbis in the Mishnah place this festival on the date of the 15th of Av, known as Tu B'Av.
I just want to say that is the Jewish Valentine's Day.
And on this day, the tribes all gather here, they celebrate the end of the grape harvest, and the tribe of Benjamin again is able to marry women from the rest of the community.
How do we know where it happened?
Okay, there's a very interesting verse in Judges 21. They said, here is a celebration to God at Shiloh from aforetime, which is north of Beit El, east of the main high road that goes from Beit El to Shechem, and south of Livonah. That description is clearly written after Shiloh is destroyed. As we read in the book of Samuel, Shiloh will be destroyed. They wanted to give us a geographic description of where Shiloh is, and therefore they point out that Shiloh is east of the main high road, and it's south of Livonah.
And that brings us to the end of the book of Judges, where we have some sort of reconciliation, but we still need to get the whole tribal confederation of Israel unified. And that happens in the book of Samuel.
The book of Samuel introduces the idea of monarchy, and it picks up where the book of Judges leaves off. The book of Judges ends with the words, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Each man did as was right in his eyes." The book of Samuel is intended to begin the idea of Israelites accepting monarchy and its problems and its advantages.
Thank you for sharing with us the book of Judges from Sean and myself. We'll see you in the book of Samuel.